Next year, Volkswagen will launch not one, but two all-electric Tiguan-sized SUVs in Australia. And the ID.4 and ID.5 have been designed, developed and engineered to do one thing: end the Tesla Model Y's domination of the Australian EV sales charts. This is the fastest ID.5 GTX. Let's check it out. So what are the ID.4 and ID.5? Well, they're heavily related to things like the Skoda Enyaq, and they're based on the Volkswagen Group's all-electric MEB architecture. Now, they've already been on sale in Europe for a couple of years now, so we think when the ID.4 and ID.5 arrives in July, we will get their freshly facelifted version. So what makes the car behind me an ID.5 and not an ID.4, you may ask? Well, it's pretty simple really, because the ID.5 gets more sportier, rakish rear styling, but both the ID.4 and ID.5 are still strictly 5-seaters. Now, pricing and full specification have yet to be announced ahead of the July debut of both the ID.4 and ID.5, but we can tell you that when the ID.4 and ID.5 arrive, they will come with two powertrain options. One will be a 210 kilowatt single motor, which produces 545 Newton meters of torque. Now, I don't know why I'm standing at the front of the car, because both versions will be strictly rear-engined and rear-wheel drive. Now, the car we're sitting beside us, this will come with a 220 kilowatt engine. It's dual powertrain, so it's got dual motors, one at the front, one at the rear, and that also produces around 460 Newton meters of torque. But the facelifted version will get even more power, we think as much as 250 kilowatts. So like other Volkswagen vehicles based on the MEB architecture, it positions the battery pack just under there between the front and rear axle. Now, this version comes with a 77 kilowatt hour battery that provides for a range of around 480 kilometers. Now, this version of the GTX, we've set the power output up to 220 kilowatts. It also accelerates from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in around 6.3 seconds, which means it's pretty brisk. Now, as far as charging rates go, it can charge up to 175 kilowatts. But remember, the facelifted version is coming, and we think it's going to have an even more powerful battery, and which will provide for a better range and even faster charging. So since it's an EV, at the front of the ID.5, it's very smooth and aerodynamic, because you want to maximise range with these sorts of vehicles. But there is an air intake down there. Now, despite it having 220 kilowatts, we're a little bit disappointed to see that at the rear of the car, it has drum brakes instead of the usual discs you might expect on a performance car. But that's because most of the braking done on Volkswagen Group EVs is by brake regen, which claws back energy. So I guess it's a bit of a win. Inside the ID.5, it's a mixture of impressive and infuriating. Impressive stuff first. There's lots more space than things like a Tiguan in here, and in the back, even though this is the rakish version, I mean, a pair of tall adults can get comfortable here. And the boot space is 549 litres, which I think is pretty good considering that beneath the boot is the electric motor. So just think how huge it could be if this was front drive. Anyway, more impressive stuff. Inside, fit and finish, well, it's way above a Tesla. I mean, we've been driving this now for 2 days. There's no creaks, rattles, broken bits. It does feel a lot better built and assembled. Now, the infuriating stuff. Unfortunately, this has the old style Volkswagen infotainment system that was introduced on the Mark 8 Golf, which means everything is done via this 12-inch touchscreen, and it's just slow, and it's difficult to find things. And it has this really annoying natural speak assistant that is triggered by practically everything. Ahead of you is a 5-inch instrument cluster, digital instrument cluster, which again is so much easier than having to look at everything for speed that you have to do with a Tesla. So impressive, minimalistic, nice design, comfortable seats. What more could you want? There's so much to love about the way the ID.5 GTX delivers its performance. The powertrain is smooth and quiet and punchy. You rarely wish for more performance on a quiet country road. With a low centre of gravity and suspension load by 50mm, the ID.5 GTX can be hustled along at a surprising pace. There's plenty of agility too, thanks to torque vectoring. And there's also a rear-wheel drive bias to the way it goes around corners. On the move, there's a choice of either a D mode or B, The latter increases brake regen, but there's no one pedal setting. Another huge bonus of the ID.5 GTX is compared to the Tesla Model Y, it lacks that car's brittle ride. It's a more comfortable car. So is the ID.5 GTX the best to drive in its fast EV class? Well, ultimately, for sheer engagement, we think the Tesla Model Y still is a compelling package, and we haven't even mentioned the Kia EV6. And that's why pricing for both the ID.4 and ID.5 GTX will be crucial in Australia. So there we have it. The first impressions of the ID.5 are very impressive indeed. It's a decent drive, it rides so much better than a Tesla Model Y. But of course, pricing will be crucial. But there's some good news, because when Cupra launched the Born, which is based on the Volkswagen Group product, it offered cutthroat pricing. And if Volkswagen Australia can do the same for the ID.4 and ID.5, it might just have a winner on its hands.